This conference will now be recorded.
All right, well, welcome to our last meeting of the calendar year 2022. I'd like to go ahead and call it to order. It's 1:34. As you'll see, we allowed for public comment at the beginning and end of the meeting. So I'll open up the floor for any public comments. All right, well, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on with the agenda. But first, I'd like to introduce Melissa Copps, who is a new member to the subcommittee, a member of the Energy Efficiency Board, and wears many hats in the energy sector. So Melissa, welcome to this subcommittee, and I'd like to go ahead and give you the floor, introduce yourself, and talk a little bit about what you currently do.
Sure, thank you, Brenda. So I am the municipal representative to the EEB. And so I'm representing the city of New Haven. I am the architect for the city of New Haven. And I also, have a lot of other things that I do, including a lot of work with the Connecticut Green Building Council and AIA Connecticut. And so generally, I'm a building science expert and very interested in healthy indoor air quality. So that's me. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you so much, Melissa. We appreciate it, and I'm so glad to have you on the subcommittee. So moving on, I'd like to get a motion to approve the September meeting minutes. We provided you all with those minutes in advance, and I'd like to introduce, entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. That's Vicky.
Thank you, Vicky. Is there a second?
Second, John Harity.
Thank you, John. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays or abstentions? Okay, motion passes. We're going to move on. So I'll now turn it over to Brian to review agenda item number 4.
Cool. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so this is just the regular meeting schedule for 2023. We've got our March 22nd meeting, June 21st, September 27th, and December 20th. Regular quarterly meetings. We set these dates based on a couple of years ago, we did a review of the important timeline dates for planning for both the Green Bank and the EDCs with the CLNM. So we wanted to align all these dates with those planning time horizons as well as the legislative session. So this is pretty regular, just same thing year to year. I think it's the third Wednesday of the month. Yeah, that's it. Cheryl has sent around the invites to folks, but the recommendation here is to approve the meeting schedule for 2023.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions about the schedule for 2023? Okay, I was going to make a comment about the December meeting, but given that we have a pretty robust attendance for this year, my only concern was having a meeting a week before the holiday, the Christmas holiday, but doesn't seem to have deterred folks. So I think we can go ahead and keep that date on the calendar. But if there are no other questions, I'd like to open the floor up for a motion to approve.
John Harity, so moved.
Excellent. Is there a second? I'll go ahead and second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays or abstentions? All right, motion passes. So let's continue to move on with the agenda, Brian. Sliding through here pretty quickly.
Cool, yeah.
I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you to review the status of the clean energy industry report.
Fantastic. So members of the Joint Committee might recall that we do a clean energy industry report. We've done several of them. We did one in 2020 and 2021. Just to provide an update, we've engaged in a contract with BW Research Partnerships for the 2022 and have an option on 2023. The 2022 report would include the 2021 data. I was notified yesterday that data and report are forthcoming. We take that and then we produce, we take what is a technical report and we produce something that's visually appealing and condenses the information. I haven't heard when the data for 2022 will be available, obviously at the end of 2022, but we do have the option of receiving that data as well. Our EDC partners have been great. With the contract with BW Research, we share the cost across our respective organizations. So we've got those agreements in place as well. In terms of our timeline for deliverables, we're looking at most likely the spring, March, April, to have this report done, which is a pretty good timeline in that it's in the middle of legislative session, and to be talking about jobs is always a good thing. So yeah, that's a quick update. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Brian, this is John Harity. Will we do press around this when the report is finalized?
We typically do from the perspective of a press release and a webinar on the report. If there's anything beyond that you're thinking about, let us know. I'm sure our utility colleagues and us are happy to celebrate projects anytime and use the report as a way to raise the message of jobs. But press release, we usually do.
To follow up on John's question, I was wondering if it would be useful to start thinking about maybe using this as a way to present at the conference that's coming up in October, the Connecticut Energy Conference and Expo, and that perhaps that would be a good medium to also promote this study.
That would be great, Brenda. I mean, in terms of conference organizers maybe having an agenda item on the state of clean energy jobs in Connecticut. And then just thinking out loud here, maybe having a few leaders of contractor companies speak as well to, the challenges and opportunities. Sounds like it would be a cool panel.
Yeah, I think it would be.
I have one
Melissa?
question. Yeah,
Mhm.
just related to what you just said about challenges and opportunities. I'm assuming that this report is kind of a snapshot of what the industry looked like in 2022. But I'm
Melissa, you
wondering.
cut out.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Let's see. So I was wondering.
We can hear you, but we didn't catch the beginning of. Yeah, the beginning you cut out.
Okay. I was saying that I understand that this is probably a report about a snapshot of the industry in 2022. And I'm wondering if there's any looking to the future in terms of, what we have coming and the workforce that we need to meet those goals.
So I could jump in a little bit here, Melissa. I think that's a good question. And I think it would be good to coordinate on the narrative for this report with, Deep can help assist on that with the Office of Workforce Strategy and DECD, but in particular the Office of Workforce Strategy, who we are coordinating with and building a team to work together on, conducting needs assessments, and ensuring that we're leveraging all of the, all of our federal funding opportunities are being leveraged in a way that promotes an equitable workforce in Connecticut, a clean economy workforce in Connecticut. So happy to coordinate on how that could feed into the report and how the report could discuss like upcoming next steps in that regard.
That
Thank
sounds
you,
great.
Vicky. That sounds great.
Vicky, I think what we would do that would be great. If we could do a connection, maybe what we could have OWS look at are the last 2-year reports and pull out or think about how that report tone can change given their perspective, and then we can do the 3rd year, which would in this case be 2022, with that guidance in mind. That would be great.
Yeah, I think
Kind
we
of keep
could bring that to them. We have regular meetings with them, so we could bring that to them for input for sure.
Thanks, Vicki. That's a great suggestion as well. Okay, any other questions about or comments about the industry report? All right, hearing none. Brian, let's keep flowing. Oh, Melissa, did you have something?
Yeah, you saw my green. I was thinking, I'm sure there's going to be some equity metrics as a part of this report.
Yes, we had a really robust discussion about that last year as BW began to plan for the 2022 report. The 2021 report outlined some deficiencies with diversity in the industry. So we definitely, along with the Green Bank, wanted to emphasize and amplify that piece for this year's report.
Great.
One more thing on that, actually, and I meant to say this earlier. I think that we should, if this has not already been suggested by the utilities, we should consider highlighting the program that Leticia Colon has been running, which is really, it's been supported by federal funding, by the energy efficiency funds as well, and is a great model for doing equitable workforce development. So I think we should consider that as a sort of a highlighted section.
Cool. Those
Good
kind of
point.
call-outs are good. Those kind of call-outs are good. And it might be that we have on the equity side there, it's not as robust as it needs to be, just in terms of the federal data that's collected. I suspect now underneath Biden that they're collecting more. But we probably have more trend data now on race, ethnicity, gender, age, unionization, those sorts of things that we can maybe have a section that looks at trends a little bit with the equity lens on.
Yep. Great.
I'll
Great
reach out.
discussion.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Brian. What was that?
I was just going to say I'll reach out and coordinate with Vicki on OWS and just the tempo and tone of the report.
Awesome. Yep. Okay, let's move on, Brian. Next item. And I believe this is also you, correct, Brian?
Yes, this is an update on kind of where we are on our comprehensive plan process. We always, again, this quarterly meeting for both us and the EDCs, we're doing updates on our respective plans. So on the Green Bank side, just broadly, we're continuing within the context of a transition here in the state of Connecticut. We're transitioning on a lot of things from net metering to a tariff on the behind the meter renewable energy side. On energy storage solutions, we got at this time last year a final decision from the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority to start the program. So we're heading into year 2 of energy storage solutions. So we're excited by that. Working with Vicki and her team at DEEP, our colleagues at Department of Housing, the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, and HUD, working through a PURA docket, docket number 220802, which is year 2 of the Residential Renewable Energy Solutions Program. We're able to make significant strides on affordable housing, which we're all really excited by. I think we're going to start to see a lot of investment in and deployment of renewable energy in affordable housing as a result of that decision. And then more so on the green bank side, you've heard from me in the past talk about the expansion of our scope beyond clean energy to include environmental infrastructure, which includes a number of different things like land conservation, parks and recreation, agriculture, water, waste and recycling, climate adaptation and resilience, and other things like carbon offsets and ecosystem services that we're building that capability out. We're still currently in the process of hiring our director for the program. We're coming down to the wire on making a decision on that, so very excited by that. But one of the elements of that public act was the creation of an environmental infrastructure fund, which for those of you who look at this act, it does a good job separating the Clean Energy Fund and the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative allowance proceeds, essentially saying those proceeds need to continue to be used for clean energy. Green Bank, you'll create an environmental infrastructure fund that you'll have to raise funding, specifically federal funding for, in order to continue to advance the environmental infrastructure component of your new scope. And that's to say that we're excited because what we had anticipated then is come to fruition now, which is the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund was included within the Inflation Reduction Act. For those of you who have followed this over the last decade, the Connecticut Green Bank was created as a result of a failed federal policy back in 2009 at the federal level. The proponent of the bill to create a national climate bank came to the state of Connecticut and worked with Commissioner Esty and the Governor Malloy and the legislative leaders to create the Connecticut Green Bank. So we were and have been a demonstration of the Green Bank model. And as a result of the IRA, $27 billion was created that's administered by the EPA to, one, support zero emission technologies. There's actually, I think I have a slide on it. Yeah, here we go. The $27 billion Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, there are two aspects of it. $7 billion of it is Senator Sanders' part of the bill. This is a zero emission technologies part of the bill. The bill actually cites a residential rooftop. And right now the EPA is in a process accepting public comments. We're very familiar with this part of the bill because Senator Sanders his congressional staff came to us indirectly over a year ago. They wanted to know how the RCIP was ensuring that solar PV, rooftop solar PV, was being deployed on low to moderate income family homes. We're a solar with justice state, so they wanted to know all the pieces to that. But now we've got a $7 billion competitive grants program that the EPA will be issuing for zero emission technologies. Senator Sanders is steadfast on solar PV. I've known that because they came to us over a year ago, but there's currently a debate at the EPA through a public process on whether or not those zero emission technologies should be broader than solar. So interesting to watch the Senator Sanders conversations with the EPA administrator on that. The second component of it is known as the National Climate Bank provisions. These were the provisions led by Congresswoman Dingell from Michigan, who passed several times through the House the Clean Energy and Sustainability Accelerator, also known as the National Green Bank, the U.S. Climate Bank. It's had various iterations as our congressional leadership over the years. Senator Murphy, Congressman Himes, DeLaura, Senator Blumenthal have been very actively involved in that policy. But Senator Markey and Senator Van Hollen and Dingell got the $20 billion included in the IRA for a national climate bank. Lots of debate today around whether or not that would be a single national organization or include several organizations implementing those funds. So we're excited by it. There are lots of little interesting links, I think, in this deck if you wanted to look at some press release links. But it's good to see President Biden leading the way with Administrator Regan leading the charge on the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So that's to say we are ready to go after those funds to help fill some of that environmental infrastructure fund coffer that we had intended. But we've been very actively involved in the public comment process of the EPA. The EPA staff came to us and state level green banks. We had a session, Bert represented us in that November 1st session. They had evening listening sessions on the 1st and the 9th. We testified on the 9th. Take a look, again, the link is there in the spreadsheet, or excuse me, in the PowerPoint. We provided comments to EFAB, the Environmental Finance Advisory Board of the EPA, which advises the EPA administrator. And then we submitted our own EPA comments on December 5th. Very, very extensive comments. As you can imagine, we pulled a decade of work together to provide our advice and guidance to the EPA on how to administer these funds. And we've got an outstanding team who's working on this project. This is our #1 priority of this fiscal year, is to ensure that we enable this EPA investment in Connecticut, because we have worked for over a decade to demonstrate how the Green Bank model can work, and now federal resources are at play. So from our comprehensive plan perspective, that is our focus. Kind of midway in this fiscal year, we're going to continue to implement our comp plan, but now we're looking at the IRA opportunity ahead of us, and specifically this fund as an opportunity to accelerate what's happening here in Connecticut with a focus on low-income and disadvantaged communities. Why don't I stop there and see if there are any questions or comments?
Thank you, Brian. That was great. Do we know what the timing is of these resources that you all plan on going after? Are they the funds being released pretty quickly, or is it a longer process?
It's a great question. Reading the tea leaves a little bit. The language within the IRA speaks to EPA having released funding 180 days from the signing of the act. President Biden signed the IRA on the 16th of August. So we anticipate in mid to late February, the EPA coming out with a solicitation, maybe more. They received over 3,000 comments on December 5th. So the EPA is doing a great job of running a process, reviewing feedback. My bet is that the end of February, early part of March, sometime in the late winter, early spring, an RFP or multiple RFPs will come out. Nobody knows if it will be on the Bernie Sanders section of the $7 billion or the National Climate Bank section of the other 3 congressional leaders. But we will see. There will be a lot of politics on this part of the bill. You could just Google it. Very interesting things coming up. But the bill also says that all funds need to be expended and out of the federal coffers by September of 2024. Again, intentionally set by the writers of the bill, because that would be before the next elections. So all of it very intentionally done. We're working very hard to help Connecticut realize its value.
Gotcha.
I'd just love to jump into, so Deep also provided comment on this opportunity, and we worked with the Green Bank and coordinated. And so basically our points where we want, obviously as much funding flexibility as possible, including having funds available to state entities as gap fillers. We advocated for formula allocation to states to help speed up funding rollout and support coordination by states among the in-state entities. And we asked for states to be able to use their own state-specific definitions for low income. So just among some of our other advocacy there.
Oh, that's great, Vicki. That's great to know, especially that last part. You know how I feel about that.
Yes, we do a lot of advocacy on that at DOE. And unfortunately, a lot of times, they get kind of, sometimes and I'm not sure in this case, Brian, if it's true for this particular funding, but I know for a lot of the funding that is being allocated to Connecticut through DOE, it is restricted to area median income limitations versus what we use, which is state median income. So it will make it a little bit more difficult to implement, some of the DOE related funding. I'm not sure if that's true, frankly, for the EPA funding. But we can.
I think it's to be determined. And just to add another kudos to Deep, Commissioner Dykes and Becca Treach did a phenomenal job coordinating other states on that comment document as well. So there's a state letter that has 11 states, including Puerto Rico, that have provided those 3 comment areas that the commissioner just spoke to. Just an amazing job getting all states on board with the single message. It's a very strong message that the EPA administrator, I think, would be open to listening to. Great job by Deep.
And great coordination on your part too at the Green Bank, Brian. It was a good effort by all.
I had a question. This is John Harity. Brian, are you saying that the state passed enabling legislation to broaden the Green Bank's mandate to encompass this whole new set of areas of concentration, but didn't allocate any money for it?
That's correct, John. But if we step back, at the time we were bullish on this passing. This was right after the elections. I think we saw the Senator Manchin, Senator Schumer play out the way it did. I literally can recall where I was when they reached agreement. It was that important. But I think we had thought it was going to happen initially in the Biden presidency. It took a little time. But that's why we included, and we were willing to, not have state funding in the Environmental Infrastructure Fund because we anticipated competing for and winning federal funding. But we also built into the provisions of the environmental infrastructure policy the ability for the Green Bank to issue 50-year bonds. So we also have the ability to do that. I think the federal funds will serve as a way of credit enhancing those bonds and allow us to raise more citizen bonds. But we still have some time. This application process will work its way through. Again, you'll see politics play out. Our hope is that maybe at this time next year, there will be contracts in place and money will start to flow in 2024, is my guess.
Thank you.
I had a question. I'm not as familiar with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and I know that there's a lot of details still being worked out, but who's eligible to apply for that funding?
Great question. So the 2 parts of the bill, let me go back here. The Bernie Sanders $7 billion zero emission technologies part of the bill that focuses on low income and disadvantaged communities. The applicants can be states, municipalities, tribes, or other eligible entities. And the eligible entities has a specific definition in the statute that is pretty complicated, but broadly includes nonprofits. The $20 billion, the National Climate Bank provisions, is really where a lot of the debate is happening, because Senator Markey, Senator Van Hollen, and Congresswoman Dingell wanted a single national climate bank. And now there is a discussion around whether or not to have a single nonprofit climate bank and instead have multiple recipients of these funds being groups like community development financial institutions, credit unions, financial institutions that we partner with here in Connecticut. That one specifically deals with eligible entities. You can't be a depository institution, and other specific items. I'll try to chat through, or I'll do a follow-up note. You know what, actually, I don't know if I included it in the materials, but I'll do a follow-up link to this part of the bill so you can see it. It's very short. The Clean Energy and Sustainability Accelerator language that passed in the House twice was about a 30-page bill. That 30-page bill had to turn into a 3-page bill in reconciliation that the parliamentarian approved. So it gets shortened quite a bit. But these congressional leaders have expressed their intent to the White House on what they wanted to see, and that is what we're going to see play out over the coming months, whether their intent will be upheld.
Hey, any other question or comments for Brian regarding this? All right, hearing none, let's continue to flow on. And I believe we have, is it Steve or Ron?
Yes. Hi, this is Steve Bruno of Eversource. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I think Stacy's having a little bit of a computer difficulty, so I'll go through this, and if others want to comment, feel free. So since we had our last quarterly update, the companies had submitted the 2022 to 2024 plan update that we filed November 1st of 2022, primarily to update the program year 2023. In response to the plan update, DEEP provides conditions of approval. There are about 25 conditions, and then I'm just going to highlight the companies responded back to 3 of those conditions. One of them was providing an alternative verification pathway for C&I customers. Another one was to modify the heat pump incentives to address a new fuel switching guidelines and a new Connecticut energy efficiency test, which allows the ability to claim savings from fossil fuel measures as well. And then we additionally filed a compliance item to provide a transition from res new construction to an all-electric program offering. Next slide. In terms of decarbonization efforts, Capital for Change implemented, they're the ones that administer the Connecticut Heat Loan Program. And so they had updated their savings calculator so that we can now include additional heat pump technologies in both heating systems and cooling systems. We're transitioning to the res new construction all-electric offering by July 1st of 2023, simplifying the midstream offering for heat pumps. And then just a couple other items there. We're offering a residential insulation bonus in our 2023 plan update, and also providing other fuel optimization incentives for businesses. Next slide. In terms of just, I know these are a little bit more detail here than maybe work for reference points, but in terms of available incentives to put things in perspective, there's an equipment discount column for various technologies, air source heat pumps, variable refrigerant flow VRFs, ground source heat pumps, and heat pump water heaters. And these are the incentive levels that the companies provide to customers that invest in that energy efficiency equipment. I won't go through each one. And next slide. And similarly, on the new construction side, the companies have put together a table for residential and commercial incentive structures for new construction offerings, for air source heat pumps, same thing, variable refrigerant flow technologies, and also ground source heat pumps. And those will hopefully, initiate investment on behalf of customers that may previously have been not willing to participate. Next slide. In terms of 2022 reports, the companies work with the Energy Efficiency Board to draft the annual legislation report. That's a compliance item due March 1st, 2023. And we work with the Green Bank on a lot of the joint statistics in terms of jobs saved. There's the report that Brian referenced before, and other tax benefits to customers, health saving benefits. We provide those joint efforts with both utility companies and also with the efforts from the Green Bank programs as well. And then the focus areas in the 2022 plan, which we mentioned last time, were decarbonization, equity, energy affordability. So the theme will be the themes of the letter, and also the stats that we provide in the report will highlight those areas. And then Brian already mentioned we're working with the Green Bank on the clean energy industry report and sharing the funding with them as well.
Thanks.
Next slide. You bet.
Steve, just quick question.
Sure.
Moving forward, if you go back 2 slides, I think it was, I just wanted to know if moving forward you could include a little bit more definition as to what the per ton means for everyday users.
Okay.
Clarifying that so that people who are maybe from the public, if they're reading this, they would understand what that means if they live in a single family home or a multi-family home, etc.
Yeah, maybe we could put a footnote in there, like an average per home, or because how many units you put per home, things like that. Makes sense.
Right.
You bet.
Thank you. All right, does that conclude? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Ron, is Ron on the line, or we?
I think I don't think Ron is, but Larry, is anything you want to add, Larry? Are we good?
All good on my side. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. And I don't think Stacy was able to connect, but if anything Stacy or Richard wanted to add, feel free. Otherwise, I think we're good with the CLM plan.
Right. Any questions for Steve or comments? All right, so we're going to move on to agenda item number 7, opportunities and challenges for healthy housing. Next slide. So we brought this up in the last few meetings. And I think this has been an opportunity for us to, as a membership, to think about healthy housing, especially with all these federal dollars that are coming down from the EPA and the DOE. So we wanted to do, Brian, did you want to maybe provide a little bit more background and do a better job than I can?
Oh, no. It's I think last time we wanted to, set some context for healthy housing, and today we wanted to continue that conversation. So last time, just a quick snippet to Brenda's point, we provided a great overview of the state incentives, and we got another great snippet there from Steve. So we reviewed a lot of the incentive programs through CLNM, the EDC administration of the Residential Renewable Energy Solutions Program, SCEF, which we're going to talk about later on in the agenda, and then the Energy Storage Solutions Program. So last time we got an overview of all those great incentive programs, and then we gave you a little bit of a taste of what was happening on the Inflation Reduction Act, recognizing that it had only passed a month prior, but a lot of things included within there that are going to enable tax credits to flow to our housing. Energy efficiency tax credits, renewable energy tax credits, rebates, and other things like adders. There's a lot of possible adders for domestic content materials, energy communities, communities that may have had a retired coal-fired power plant, brownfields, low-income adders, and other labor provisions as well on prevailing wage and apprenticeships. So lots of really good opportunities when you think about the state and federal incentives. So that's what we talked about last time. This time, we wanted to just continue that conversation because, a goal of all of ours should be, as we work together to, look towards our 2030 greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, our weatherization targets, our renewable portfolio standard targets, whatever our 2030 targets are. We want to keep those in mind. And then we've got our 2040 target of a zero carbon electric sector. So to the extent we can look at all of our different targets that we have, we also have got, medium and heavy duty vehicle, light duty zero emission vehicle targets, and all the different incentives that we have in Connecticut are really good opportunities for our end use consumers. When we stack on top of that all these federal tax credits, these adders, and then the ability to monetize the investment tax credit by transferring it or allowing direct payment to other parties, there's a lot of opportunity here. But for end use consumers right now, they're looking at this and they're like, okay, where do I start? Where do I go? It's literally an incentive maze. Bert Hunter on our team coined that term, the incentive maze. If we can help customers navigate that and go straight on through by coordinating all of our programs and making it easy, then we're going to be able to go and achieve significant penetration in our targets for that 2030 time period. I kind of feel like, our time is now in Connecticut. We're in a much better position than other states because we have great coordination, great policies, great incentives. And when we bring in this federal plethora of other incentives, we can make them work together. We're going to be able to accelerate our deployment of clean energy and investment of clean energy. So, as all those things excite us, if we start to take a look at just different use cases or different market segments and ask ourselves the question of, what are all the incentives that can be offered to ensure efficiency and clean energy deployment, affordable housing comes to the top. So I mentioned the docket 220802 earlier. We've got really a favorable ruling there on affordable housing's treatment in the behind the meter renewable energy program. There are 1,300 properties, affordable housing properties that were identified in that process that are either state-backed or federal-backed housing projects that have over 80,000 units. So this is a part of the affordable housing landscape. There's also naturally occurring affordable housing and other definitions that DEEP, DOH, CHAFA, and the Green Bank are going to be coordinating on. But it provides, specifically from a renewable energy perspective, because we've really failed over the last decade to reach affordable housing. It's difficult. But now we've got all the pieces aligned to make it work. On the efficiency side, we've got all the CL&M program incentives that we can stack in there. On the federal side, there are some tax credits for, per unit substantial rehab or new construction, additional rebates through homes that DEEP will be administering, and potentially other grant and loan programs that we can compete for. So lots on the efficiency side. On the renewable energy side, we've got that RRES that I'm talking about up top. This treats affordable housing as a residential customer. Why that's important is because there's no competition when you're treated as a residential customer. There's no cap on the amount of capacity. And then the incentive level that clean energy will receive for being deployed on affordable housing would be about a 31-cent tariff for 20 years, which is significant. I think the non-residential energy solutions program is receiving about half of that. So affordable housing is now being treated as residential. It would get twice the incentive, which should make more investment happen here. And then all the federal stuff, specifically the ability to stack federal tax credits. There's the possibility of receiving up to 70% tax credit. Imagine that, of the installed cost of a project, depending upon all the different adders. So imagine a an affordable housing project in Bridgeport that was, located near Harbor Station 1 that went down, that was retired, the coal-fired power plant, would receive the 10% adder, low income community. And if the project used domestic content, you can stack up and get 70%. So that's on the renewable side. On the storage side, we've got the Energy Storage Solutions Program. In Pura's decision on the RRES, it also decided that the Energy Storage Solutions Program would treat affordable housing as the same customer, the distressed municipality customer, which means more incentives will be provided. So up to $7,500 per unit of affordable housing for battery storage backup. And then our utility colleagues administer on top of that upfront incentive, a performance-based incentive on $1 per kilowatt summer or in winter season. Federal tax credits, again, are all still live in that. EV recharging, if we wanted to think about our level 2 or DCFC chargers, there's significant incentives there, as well as
Brian, just
credits.
and I don't want to forget it. Time out for one quick. So on top of the Connecticut incentives for storage, you're saying that customers are also eligible for an additional 50% tax credit?
Yeah, so the way these incentives usually work, like we did through the RSIP, is any state incentives usually go first off the top of the installed cost of the system. And then whatever's remaining gets applied to the federal tax credit. So it would be 50% of what is remaining, as an example. But each of these use cases is going to require that kind of a dive, Brenda, meaning we're going to have to assume a certain type of project that has all these characteristics in it, and then try to wrestle with what's the economic proposition in the end. It's fair to say in Connecticut, given our incentive climate, that for all clean energy and energy efficiency, I'm almost willing to say all, like affirmatively, that they're all going to be in very positive economic conditions for the end use consumer. We just have to make it easy for the consumer to act, right? That's going to be a challenge. And what I'm trying to say here and I'm not doing it as articulately as I'd want, is that affordable housing is one use case. There are a number of other use cases. Our staff, I asked my team, what use cases do we want to dive deeper in with Deep in their team and the utilities as different use cases, and things like resiliency hubs popped up, municipal clean energy, lots of different things. So if we spend some time together going through different use cases, I think we're going to find pathways to navigate that incentive maze that is going to make it easy for customers to participate in our programs and to accelerate the uptake of the programs.
Yes, if I could jump in real quick here too. This is just such an important discussion. Navigating the maze, so to speak, of incentives is going to be difficult for everybody, right? And we also need to understand and build all of these different use cases in order to understand how best to leverage our programs to be able to unlock the federal funding, and maybe to be able to sort of, in some cases where we're getting a very high level of federal funding, it may allow us to redirect some of our program monies to other places where we're not getting as much federal funding, right? If the incentives are, if you couple federal incentives with state incentives and end up with sort of much more incentive than you need, then you can redirect to other use cases as well. So it's just really important for our planning, but also for consumer education. And so we're very invested in working with the Green Bank, and I know the EEB has been working very hard on this issue and with their consultants as well, and starting to really dig through some of this. We also are developing lists internally at DEEP of all of the available programs for people either in affordable housing or people with limited income, including things like the low income discount rate. So, there's concern sometimes about switching people to an electric heat pump because now the electric bill is providing the heat, but if if people are eligible for a low income discount rate that helps buy down some of the cost of their electricity, that can help offset some of that. So we need to be able to look at this holistically with all of the available programs in order to make good programming decisions, but also to help educate both consumers and developers and our installer networks who are out there doing the work so that they can help consumers understand and also just the business case for developers to really start focusing on cleaner options for buildings. So there's a lot of work to be done here, but I think it's something that we're really excited about partnering with everybody on.
Brenda, this is Richard. Can I add one point to Vicky's and Brian's here, or one question, I guess?
Of course.
So all of this speaks to the need for how do we communicate this? I mean, I think both Brian and Vicky made the point, but how do we bundle all this together so it becomes somewhat of a one-stop shop for customers and contractors? So there's somebody could go and figure out who's eligible for what programs, what's on the table. Is this an opportunity to develop some sort of web-based platform that cuts across the CLNM programs, the federal funds that are coming, the green bank offerings? It sounds very complicated. Those of us who are in the know, there's a lot there. So how do we communicate this out to consumers, customers, and contractors in Connecticut?
I do want to flag right up front that we have the Energize CT platform, and that Energize CT platform already includes programs and incentives beyond what the EEB and beyond the CLNM funds. So I think leveraging that existing platform makes a lot of sense, further leveraging it. But I think we're also going to need tools for contractors that, maybe those tools are contained on the Energize CT website, but where they can enter an income level for somebody and see all of the things available to them, right? Or enter certain eligibility criteria, which might go beyond income in some cases, and find out, all of the things available. So I think that's a sort of tool that it would benefit us from working across all of our, various programs to develop and implement.
And I think that's a great question, Richard, because that it is a challenge for organizations like mine to even try to understand and then interpret a lot of this for everyday users. So what we're looking at doing is, in addition to educating everyday consumers, we're also planning on hosting a series of webinars for providers. So our fuel banks are also going to be getting some education around all of these different programs that are available to folks to reduce their energy burden. I also put in a chat an example of what happens in the state of Michigan when someone is seeking light heap assistance. They are also allowed or able to seek or apply for other forms of assistance and in a one-stop shop type platform. So I just thought I'd share it. If anyone wanted to take a look at it, it would be ideal for there to be an application on the Energize CT website where folks could maybe get a sense of what's available to them if they plug in certain information about themselves, like their type of housing that they live in, their income, etc. I think that would be a useful tool. I also wanted to just quickly note that I understand that Eversource and UI have entered into an agreement with the Hancock platform, which is an energy assistance tool as well as weatherization. It's the same platform that Operation Fuel is using, and perhaps there's ways in which we can kind of coordinate our data. That's a conversation to have offline, but I just wanted to kind of throw it out there that there's platforms that are available now that could help streamline the maze.
There you go. The other thing I would add is, I think all of us in this sector are drinking from a fire hose, right? I mean, there's so much going on.
Yeah.
so much going on in the world. You know, end use consumers are being impacted by it, and all these opportunities are staring at us right in the face. You know, because we're all overwhelmed, I think we need to dig into certain areas. That's why I've been kind of hinting at or saying these little green storms, and you know, with Vicky and her team, you know, the right housing teams, the right, you know, end use consumer teams, the utilities. You know, we need a group of us at a table to work through certain segments. You know, it doesn't have to be all of them now because we'll get overwhelmed, but I think we have to pick a few spots and kind of dig in, because my gut tells me on affordable housing that we're going to need community-based strategies. We're going to need to be on the ground providing technical assistance to property owners, you know, on the spot, work them through, you know, like it's just going to need to be a different approach to really lift up those who need all the assistance to make a decision to move ahead. So it's good that we're all talking about these things, because that is what this incentive maze is about. Like, it can confuse us if we're not focused. Like, shame on us in Connecticut if we can't pull this together. We're in a great position. We're in so much better of a position than any other state because of what we got policy wise and incentive wise, that you know, let's find some spots, pick some spots, and demonstrate how we can get investment and deployment happening with all those benefits going to, you know, those tenants and property owners.
I think that,
Um,
Brian, I think we are very well positioned as compared to other states. So I do want to say that there are a lot of states who don't have, you know, the all of the infrastructure in place that we do between the EEB and our utility program administrators and the storage program and our good, you know, solar tariff, and then our WAP, our federally funded weatherization assistance fund program, and our affordable housing energy retrofits office that you know was just passed. The bill was, you know, signed by the governor. What is it, 2021? I think it was. So all of these things, you know, we have the basic framework in place, but now it's sort of knitting it all together. And this is what we've all been talking about for a long time, is getting to the level of comprehensive building retrofits and breaking down all the silos between the programs so we can knit it together, not just for our own purposes, but for everybody, you know, for our customers and for all of the developers out there. So it's just a really tremendous generational opportunity that takes us to the next level of program, comprehensive program implementation. It's very exciting.
Yeah,
Love it.
I love all this conversation, and I love what Brenda shared in the chat, because I mean, I don't know if we've been thinking this comprehensively about state assistance programs and having a one-stop shop that's not just about building retrofits, but about other assistance. Because say somebody's, you know, trying to look for, you know, they're trying to get Medicaid through Husky or something. Like, what if they went to a one-stop shop that also told them, hey, you're also available to like get, you know, health safety barrier remediation in your like house. And I think that that would be incredible to capture people we wouldn't otherwise capture.
I think that I think that's a great. I agree, and I I also, Brenda, thank you for that comment. And maybe there's a way for us to leverage Energize CT for some of that, right? You know, DSS has a very, you know, a lot of things that they have to do in administering the LIHEAP program, but you know, it's possible we could provide links to all of these things on Energize CT, which is something that we have within the CNLM program sort of oversight over, you know, and have been trying to make a more comprehensive resource. I also did want to mention, and you just mentioned it, Melissa. We also have we can't forget our REPS program, which is preparing homes for efficiency by addressing health and safety barriers, which a lot of states don't have a program like that. So we really, I mean, we are kind of killing it in Connecticut, but now we have to figure out how to really use all of that experience with our limited resources, staffing wise, to ramp things up. And I think it's a good story to tell, but a lot more work to be done.
I have one really in the weeds question. I haven't been really involved with some of the Pura stuff, but you're mentioning a lot of the eligibility is around distressed municipality. Is there also, New Haven, we're a weird case where we're no longer a distressed municipality, but like the majority of our census tracts are below 200% poverty level. So if it is just, at the level of the municipality, I think you're losing a lot of our areas that really could benefit from these programs.
That's a good
Yeah,
flag. It's probably something that has to be taken up in individual arenas, unfortunately. But once we sort of work it into our talking points, it's something that we can advocate for. So we should follow up on that.
yeah, and I feel like Vicky, I feel like Kenyatta can help us do some of the clarifying based on the Pura ruling. But I would suspect, Melissa, like in the case of New Haven, of those 1,300 affordable housing projects that were identified, that a lot of them are in New Haven. And the reason they're in New Haven, the reason they're on that list is because those housing projects participated in a state or federal backed housing program. So Pura made a decision in the docket, if an affordable housing has participated in a state program, then it will be deemed affordable housing. So I would suspect that list in New Haven, I don't know, 50 affordable, so it wasn't just census tracts, and there is flexibility now for naturally occurring affordable housing determination and other ways of looking at it that are beyond the 60% AMI definition. So yeah, it went beyond census tracts, but tried to be simple.
Okay, thanks.
Forgive me,
Brian,
I don't know.
I had a question. This is John Harity. Can we use any of the federal funds for developing a communications program about this stuff?
Good question.
It is a good question, and that's something we can, we'll certainly be evaluating as guidance comes out about federal funding, but also flagging that that's also a good way to redirect potentially some of our state funding, right? So that's what gives us so much flexibility is we have our conservation and load management funding, for example, and potentially other programs as well that if we're using that funding to leverage the additional federal funding, it might give us a little more flexibility in how we spend the state funding in order to do that. Does that make any sense?
I just think this is going to take an ad campaign like Budweiser in order to really penetrate into people's thinking. There's a lot of confusion about what programs are available now, and then when you add this extra layer, even though it's a great initiative by the federal government, it just is going to be it's going to be confusing down the whole chain with contractors, with realtors, with customers. It really needs to be simplified and then projected widely throughout the state.
I did want to kind of flag the time that we have left, and I think that this discussion should be preserved for our next meeting so that we can kind of get down into these three questions, but also maybe ask the question around who is missing from the table to help us develop a solution to the incentives maze. So let's maybe put that on the agenda for next time, and then we can, perhaps think about some planning after that. But I would like to, move on because we're almost running out of time. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if we'll be able to have a fruitful discussion around these three questions. Brian, what do you think?
I think that's right. I mean, I think we'd want to spend more time. Why don't we bring them back next time? But there were indications of it. I was just tracking the tone, and you all are very focused in on these things. I think, Melissa, you raised the point of could we think beyond energy, and Vicky, you were trying to get there with. So I think there are elements of us thinking about a full solution, a full, healthy housing solution. Okay with bringing it back along with who is missing from the table, Brenda, that you just noted. we could just add
And I think,
along.
right, and I think what's good about that is that we can, look at these 3 questions and think about how to answer them for our next meeting. So that's kind of like the homework for everybody, is to review these questions and think about, our answers when we come back together as a group. All right, so let's move on to the next agenda item. It's, I think we have, who do we have on deck for that piece? This is kind of like a roundtable of everyone who may be preparing for the session, and if folks want to maybe quickly talk about what your priorities are, I'll go ahead and open up the floor. Melissa, did you want to maybe talk about home energy score?
Oh, sure. I mean, what is the format here? What's the framework for our discussion?
So just wanting to know what the members have in plan or have thoughts about or planning on what their legislative priorities are for 2023.
And is that like personal plans or
I
related to?
think professional plans, as so Operation Fuel, I would say, for example, is focused on the home energy score in this coming session.
Yeah, and so is Connecticut Rebuilding Council. So our 2 organizations are, and I'm not, a member of the EEB as a representative of Connecticut Green Building Council. I'm a member of the EEB as a representative of the municipality, but I'd also say it's a New Haven priority as well. And we're working with our new director of climate and sustainability on energy labeling and the concept. But yes, it's I think that there are many different organizations that are really looking at energy transparency, and we're trying to move the language from energy labeling to energy transparency. We think that energy transparency is a better way to think about it. The idea that you should know what the energy efficiency is of your home or your apartment before you choose to invest in it, as a consumer protection measure, and as kind of the ability to measure something and be able to, if you don't measure it, then you can't improve it. So that's kind of a big priority, is to try to think about how we can do that as a state and what that looks like. A home energy score is one of the ways, but there's a few different other potential ways to do energy transparency. Just to note, it's funny, I was talking about this on the phone, and my colleague who, he's an engineer and used to live in the UK, and he was like, let me show you something. And, I already knew that the EU actually has these requirements and has had them for years and years, for every, home that it releases an energy efficiency score. And it's very similar to the home energy score, that you have the current rating and then what the potential rating is based on, a level of investment to increase the energy efficiency. So we kind of, I mean, the fact that it's like literally a requirement in all of the EU makes it seem like not as daunting a task potentially. But I think that our opinion is that once you have energy transparency, it unlocks a lot of different things. And it's kind of a first step to really understanding the quality of the homes we have in Connecticut, like communicating that to the public, communicating that the value of it to builders and developers, to realtors, and that without kind of a standard metric for transparency, that we're losing a lot of the investments that are being done into energy efficiency are not actually getting the value of those investments because of the lack of ability to compare across, the portfolio and be able to adequately value So anyway, there's a lot. I could talk forever about this, but that's all. That's one of our legislative priorities.
Gotcha. And the home energy score might be a great pathway for entry into helping unpack the incentive maze, but that's just my thinking. If there are no other comments, we'll move on to agenda item number 9, which is other business, unless folks wanted to share what their legislative priorities were.
Yeah, this is John Harity. The Roundtable on Climate and Jobs is looking to introduce legislation we're involved in a project in Bridgeport for a carbon neutral, clean, healthy air, renewable energy schools. And we're going to be putting in legislation to extend that program statewide.
That's great. I've heard Bassick High School is kind of in trouble there. All right. Other business. Thank you, John.
Just one more thing that I'd like to raise very quickly. So the one of the federal programs is a revolving loan fund, and I think that it's going to be important to think about how best to administer that funding and to think about all of our options for administering that funding. And I think there could be proposals from the Green Bank for how to administer that, from the utilities, maybe within the CNLM fund. And there may be other ways of administering or using some of that funding as well that DEEP has been exploring. So this is just meant to sort of tee up the issue of that, and I think it would be beneficial to. And we've talked some with the Green Bank on this, and I think we've talked some with the utilities on it. But it might be a good idea to set up some further discussion on that, just to find that the most efficient and best way of getting that money out.
All right, thank you, Vicki.
This is John Harity. I think that and I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how we interact with it, but it just can't be ignored that utility rates in Connecticut are about to almost double for residential bills, and I mean it's a significant impact for everybody in the state, and somehow or other we have to incorporate affordability into some of our discussions, and especially if, as I believe is the case, that renewables will help drive energy costs down. We just have to be paying attention to that part of the energy picture, because it's just every house is going to have this huge increase in electric cost.
So John, if I may just for a moment, the big increase that's coming is due to the increase in the standard service generation charge. And actually, people who are not hardship customers have the ability to switch to an electric supplier, which I almost have never in my life recommended doing. But I think, the first message there is that if you have the ability to switch to a retail electric supplier at a lower rate, you can save a substantial amount of money this heating season by doing so. But just monitor your bills once the standard service rate changes every 6 months. So it'll change again July 1st. So just monitor your bills, and if the standard service rate goes lower, you can switch back to it, right? So that's one thing. It really is the generation rate, and it's hitting every New England state, and it's because of our over reliance on natural gas and the war in Ukraine. I mean, that part of your electric bill, I'm not saying the rest of your electric bill is not high, but that part of your electric bill is directly caused by global events that are beyond our control. But at the same time, it is going to create an affordability crisis for a lot of people. And I know Operation Fuel is working really hard to ramp up, and we're working with them to come up with parameters for increased funding that we were able to negotiate with the utilities to help people out up to 100% of state median income. And Brenda might want to say some things about that. We also, worked on a deal with Pura that was proposed to Pura. We worked out a settlement with OCC and the utilities to bring back some of the extra revenues that we're earning on the Millstone contract, which acts as a hedge to electric rates. We're going to have those appear in people's bills earlier than they would have otherwise, starting in January. So we are looking for ways to mitigate this increase. But I think to your point, it gets back to an over-reliance on fossil fuels and the need to really deal with the way our markets are constructed in Connecticut and what we rely on for our energy supply.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation, Vicki. And yes, we're working with DEEP and both utilities to provide additional support for folks who would normally not seek Operation Fuel assistance because they don't qualify based on their higher income. And I believe this additional funding is going to get people through the winter. And in the meantime, we will be sharing that message on, it's time to start shopping for a third-party supplier and keep a close eye on those rates as they change every 6 months, so that folks are not finding themselves paying above and beyond what the standard service rate is. I hear what you're saying, John. It is going to be a tough winter for folks, but there's additional resources that are coming down to help people.
Also, additional LIHEAP resources are expected to be coming.
That's kind of my blanket statement on the additional resources. So, Brian Vernon, did you want to jump in?
I was just going to say, be careful with some of those third-party suppliers. I am on minute 40 minutes and 41 seconds with Constellation for them to pick up on their phone call right now. So I'm a little skeptical of them right now. This is the second time I've actually done this with them, where it could potentially take up to an hour for them to pick up a customer service line. But the rate is great.
Yeah,
it's definitely a risk, as far as consumer protections, and anybody who knows how long I've been working on electric supplier issues knows that I don't think I've ever recommended people switch before now. But there is substantial savings to be had for at least the duration of this standard service rate, which is until the end of June, and then people should absolutely be looking at what the next standard service rate is going to be and deciding whether to switch back.
Agree. All right, so we're dangerously close to time here. We're going to move on to other business, and we're starting off with Steve or Mackie.
Yes, say good afternoon. This is Mackie Dykes at the Green Bank. I'll be quick here given the time constraints. On municipal and state government, on the state side, we're looking to resolve a legal issue with the state accessing the financing offered through our Eversource and Green Bank partnership through the SBEA program. It's been a great source of capital for a while now for state of Connecticut energy efficiency projects. But recently an issue was flagged that's preventing the state from accessing it. So it will require a legislative resolution. I know DEEP and other agencies are planning to pursue that, but hopefully can get that through and re-unlock that financing window. On the municipal side, I think the companies are now offering an in-market with the increased terms, the municipality, or the enhanced terms that municipalities can access. So now it's up to 7 years of 0% financing for loans up to $5 million. So already seeing a lot of interest around that. And Steve, anything to add on the muni and state update?
No, that was perfect. The just to clarify, the state side is really on the state, the approval level to enter into the contract. So Green Bank did a great job with the infrastructure, so we have the financing in place. It's just getting the state to be able to have a certain official authorize the loan documents themselves. But yeah, thanks, Mackie.
Okay, so we have next update from
Sure,
Steve or
I could do this one
Yep.
as well. So we had worked with, now that we have the other grid mod offerings in Connecticut with electric vehicle charging stations and battery storage systems, we worked with DEEP to basically allow that as a qualifying measure, so that when we do the SBA muni financing, as they do energy efficiency measures, they can also get financing for electrical vehicle charging stations and battery storage systems. And then we're also working on with the SBA vendors to train them on the new financing terms and to promote more comprehensive projects, including these other grid mod opportunities, as well as streamlining some of the financing process for the C&I customers. So we're looking forward to more offerings that have these measures in them as well.
Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
All right. Next up, I believe we have either Ralph or Mackie again.
Hi, this is Ralph. I'll be handling the Smarty slides here. So be quick in the because of time. So just to follow up on the summer special offer that we offer residential customers, it was 2.99% on certain technologies focused on heat pumps, solar, thermal, battery storage, and EV charging. If you could go to the next slide. As a result of our special offer, we did 225 total projects under it. 218 were heat pumps and another 7 were battery storage. Of the 225, 17 total projects actually financed more than one type of measure for a total of $5,120,000. And a total IRB amount, our interest rate buy down amount cost to run the program of $586,000. So almost $10 of money, private money was spent, funded through local lenders with every dollar of Green Bank IRB funds, interest rate buy down funds.
Are those rates going to stay the same, Ralph, at 2.99
no,
in 2023?
No, this program expired, this offer expired October 31st of this year. And so now they're going to be back at the standard rates of 4.49% to 6.99%, depending on the length of time a consumer were to choose.
Okay.
So here we have a snapshot of heat pump projects through the end of November and from the beginning of the Smarty program. And it's a breakdown, and you can see the expansion of the technology. Now, keep in mind, in 2018, you'll see a bit of a dip there, and that's when there were budget cuts. But we continually see the technology grow and expand, and from geothermal to heat pumps to air source and even water heater. Each year, we're seeing a continually increased utilization of the technology.
Yep.
And this is by financed amount. So again, you can see the dip there in 2018 based on the budget cuts, but you can see a very nice upward trend in each section. Is you're seeing more and more investment into the different technologies over time. This slide represents the geothermal installation across the state. The teal color is also combined with solar installations. So these locations have both solar and geothermal installed at those homes. And now keep in mind, these are only projects financed through Smarty. So obviously there's more geothermal, but this is what we have data. So you can see it's spread across the state, but obviously in the Litchfield counties, we're seeing less activity. as far as geothermal installations. If you move forward. And these are the top 25 towns of that have installed heat pumps. Now, many of these higher ranking towns have had programs that have been run in terms of creating awareness and things of that nature. But you can see there the amount of heat pumps is steadily growing across all different towns and across a majority of the state. And this is a very interesting slide. Now, we don't have fossil fuel data before 2018, but what we're seeing here is heat pump installations versus fossil fuel HVAC installations. So where you include propane, natural gas, and oil burners. And you can see there's a significant increase in the heat pumps, and the fossil fuel installations has dropped off significantly, and it's clearly not keeping up with the rate of heat pump installations. So it's a great trend to see. I know that the summer special offer has certainly played a role in the 2022 data in terms of promoting the heat pump technology, but it's the type of trend that we're very happy to see. And that is all I have for today.
Thank you. Those are some really cool graphs to see. Brian, I'll turn it over to you for an update on SCEF.
Can I ask one
Oh,
question
I'm sorry.
about the heat
Yes,
pumps?
of course, John. Go ahead, John.
Is there an average cost? Do you have you happen to know like what on average it costs for a residential heat pump?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So obviously a lot of it is going to depend on the house itself and the size. I mean, if you're looking at maybe like an average, say 2,000 to 2,500 square foot house, you know, you could be looking in the neighborhood of a full conversion to say a ductless mini split type system. You could be looking at somewhere between 20 and 25,000. But there are quite a few factors that are going to play a role in that, because as an HVAC contractor comes out, they're going to want to complete, you know, a heat load calculation, and you know, depending on the insulation of the home and other factors, and how open the home actually is. I mean, because the smaller the rooms, the more walls in a house, the more heat pump units for the walls you're going to need. So that'll certainly drive up the cost. So there isn't one at like say average, but in terms of what we see, because again each house is different, you know, you're probably looking somewhere in that 20 to 25,000 number.
Thank you.
I think what we'll do, John, is we'll work with Ralph and come back with some stats next time on some of those different characteristics of homes, because that's an important question. Lots of federal tax credits, lots of state incentives. We need to get to these heat pumps. But good question.
I did, John, just to give you some, you know, like a feel-good story. We assisted a customer who received $10,000 in upgrades from Energize CT, and we were able to come in with some funding to help remediate the health and safety barriers. So it was a beautifully done project, in that now this household not only has their issues remediated, but they now have a heat pump that's going to drive down their burden. It was just great coordination between our organization and Energize CT.
I'm curious if the Connecticut Green Bank has a similar kind of transition away from fossil fuel in terms of their financing offers.
Yeah, I think what you saw in that, Melissa, that special offer is a consistency of the special offer to the wedges, the decarbonization wedges that the state has. Move to heating, electrifying heating and cooling, you know, EV rechargers, battery storage. So very climate change focused activity, as that's our mission. So you'd see incentives go towards supporting the state policy objectives. All right, so we're just kind of coming down the wire here. Just a quick update on our shared clean energy facilities from last time. Boy, when we got together in June, we talked about this potential concept of using subscriber savings, the 2.5 cent per kilowatt hour over a 20-year period, I think, which had a nominal value of $4,200 over 20 years, a present value of maybe $2,800. How could you realize that present value today and use that $2,800 today for additional energy efficiency so that you're saving more by reducing your consumption? So we submitted that concept to PURA. We filed it in the SCEF year 3, I think, proceedings. We filed the joint committee summary memo of that into the PURA filing. And then there were written comments and a technical meeting that PURA held during the year. So I'm going to try to summarize Isabel Hazelwood's great update. She pulled together these slides for me to be able to update all of you. 75 megawatts of projects are procured for years 1 through 3 of SCEF, and that is distributed between the 2 utilities. That capacity doubles from 25 megawatts a year to 50 megawatts from years 4 through 6. So we're going to see an additional 150 megawatts for years 4 through 6. The first SCEF project is expected to enter service this coming year. So PURA's final decision in that docket just recently happened. It approved all SCEF customer enrollment processes, 20% of the credits going towards low-income customers, prioritizes customers in environmental justice communities. Affordable housing facilities are now eligible to participate in SCEF. 40% of the credits will go to low to moderate income customers, affordable housing, and low-income service organizations. And SCEF prioritizes master metered affordable housing and environmental justice communities. And then in PURA's decision, they provided additional guidance on the Green Bank proposal, which is what I wanted to talk with you all about, which is, again, using those subscriber credits to finance deeper energy efficiency for those subscribers that would advance the state's carbon reduction goals. We would be able to issue Green Liberty bonds today to receive those future cash flows that we could then transfer to DEEP to use for incentives for helping those homeowners do additional energy efficiency. That was the high level concept. What PURA did was, let's see, red line edits were accompanied by a memo summarizing the EEB's feedback. PURA did not approve all the red line edits that we made to the program manual for SCEF. The authority encourages the Green Bank to continue to work with other stakeholders, including the Joint Committee, on this proposal and to present a plan during the next SCEF program annual review, submitting a proposal that specifically shows how public policy and SCEF program objectives will be furthered. So the next annual review is August of 2023. So what PURA is telling us is if the Joint Committee is serious about this proposal, then we'll put more meat on the bones and come back with, having had public comment on the concept, more details on the concept so that PURA could appropriately consider it. I know we're out of time, but I'm happy to, take guidance from Chair Watson or the Joint Committee. We're happy to continue this process of continuing this concept. But I think as we've all talked about during this meeting, there's a lot of opportunities. We're drinking from a fire hose. We're going to have to prioritize our time accordingly. Yeah, why don't I stop there? Happy to take.
I'm happy to jump in and sort of pick up that thread and just say, like, there's so much opportunity for us to coordinate on existing funding sources and coming soon funding sources that I do think that's a better area to focus on, if you agree. I mean, that's kind of where I am right now, and something we could always revisit in the future.
I think that we should consider all of these pieces as, no, Richard, the meeting goes on to 3, but we're over time. I wouldn't want to leave this off the table as we talk about all of the other sources that are available. I think we could end up making a mistake by not exploring how SCEF could work in this way.
So why don't I why don't we continue it, and why don't I present at the next joint committee meeting a pathway forward, which I think is going to require, again, more meat on the bones, some public process of comments. Maybe it's through the Equity and Environmental Justice Advisory Council. Maybe I think that's what we had put out there in our memo. But why don't we? We're going to focus on priorities. We've got a lot ahead of us, but hearing you, Brenda, this one we don't want to lose. I feel the pain of all this, but let's leave all the balls in the air and if we could find a path forward.
Agree. All right, I hate to kind of end it there, but we really should move on to public comments. Are there any comments from or questions from the public? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to move to adjourn the meeting. And everyone have a happy holidays, and we'll see you all next year.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.